Good morning. We'll call the meeting to order. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Algonquin Highlands is located on Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. We also acknowledge a historical shared presence of other Indigenous nations throughout the area, and we recognize these original inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda, please? Counselor Berry and Counselor Shortreed.
Moved by Counselor Berry, second by Counselor Shortreed. Be it resolved, the January 15th, 2026 meeting agenda be approved as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof today? Seeing none. The only comments I'd like to make is this is just a happy new year to everyone. And thanks to our public works fellows for the work that was done over the holidays. Good job. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes of the regular meeting on December the 12th? Oh, no, 11th, and the public meeting on the same day. Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Counselor Shortreed. Be it resolved, December 11th, 2025 public and regular council meeting minutes be approved as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. Could I now have a mover and a seconder to move into a public meeting? Councillors Berry and Shortreed.
Moved by Counselor Berry, second by Counselor Shortreed. Be it resolved, the regular session of council adjourn at 9:01 a.m. in order to proceed into a public meeting for the purposes of zoning bylaw amendment application AHZBA 725, part of Lot 3, Concession 1, Geographic Township of Stanhope.
All in favor? That's carried. We'll call the public meeting to order and ask Mr. O'Callaghan to give us an overview of the application. Morning.
This property is currently zoned recreational commercial with exception number 7 and designated rural under the official plan. The lands are approximately 7.79 acres in area with 108 meters of frontage on Cushog Lake Road. Surrounding uses are generally shoreline residential, rural and recreational commercial. The lands are currently developed with a marina and storage structures. The purpose and effect of this zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the property from the recreational commercial exception 7 zone to recreational commercial exception 14 zone, which would permit the development of a single family dwelling as an accessory use, as well as carry forward all the former exceptions that were part of the exception number 7 zone. Notice of the rezoning was posted on the property, circulated to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands, posted on the township website and circulated to all prescribed agencies. No written objections have been received to date. One thing to note is the official plan does require a 300-meter setback from at-capacity lakes for new septic systems, resulting from lot creation or other planning approvals, which this would fall under. Certain exemptions do, however, apply, and one of those exceptions applies in this case where the tile field would flow at least 300 meters to the lake or away from the lake. The County of Haliburton also identified this as this is within their official plan as well, but they have no concerns with the proposed zoning bylaw amendment as being proposed. Staff are recommending approval of the zoning bylaw amendment as it's been circulated.
Do any members of council have questions for the planner? Hearing none, I understand that the applicant is present. Is there anything that you'd like to speak to on the application? Or we're good to go? Okay. So if no questions, I guess we would ask for a mover and a seconder to, oh, sorry, go ahead, Son.
Just
Oh,
want to make sure there's no other,
I'm
people
sorry, I
present.
did miss that. Is there anyone else in the audience or online who wishes to speak to the application, either for or against? Yes, sir. You wish to speak to the application? If you wouldn't mind, Sean, just repeat his question and
Sure. So the question was just the location of the proposed dwelling. It is proposed to be in the back corner of the lot, which would be the southeast corner. I believe that's, yeah. no. Mhm.
okay, does that answer your question sufficiently?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, hearing no further questions or concerns being raised, could I ask for a move and a seconder to adjourn the public meeting? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, the public meeting adjourns at 9:05 a.m. and regular session resume.
All in favor? That's carried. And the bylaw associated with this will come later on in the agenda, so there's no concerns. Could I have a mover and a seconder to accept the planner's report? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Berry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, Council acknowledge receipt of report PL 126 regarding rezoning of lands located at part of Lot 3, Concession 1, Geographic Township of Stanhope, submitted by Sean O'Callahan dated January 15th, 2026, and Council directs a bylaw be tabled for consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So next on the agenda is, under delegations, is Terry Moore on behalf of the Halliburton Highlands Green Burial Society, who wants to speak to the use of the gazebo. Good morning.
Good holiday. I want to thank the Public Works Department also for dealing with this enormous amount of snow that we've had so far. My God, it's been a challenge. So I want to thank council for the opportunity to, well, first off, I want to thank council for its support for the creation of a year-round green burial at St. Stephen's Cemetery. And also want to thank you for the partnership that resulted in the creation of the beautiful timber frame gazebo within that green burial section. This presentation was originally scheduled for December 11th meeting. And so it was tabled with the township staff on I think on or about December 5th. So a few things have happened since then. And so I'm going to have to make slight modifications to the text that I sent along with the images, but by and large, it's within the same framework as the original, presentation that I
gazebo.
forwarded on the 5th of December. Principally, the biggest change is that the staff of the township have produced a draft policy with respect to gazebo use, and that's been attached to the agenda package that was sent out on Tuesday afternoon. We have not had a chance to give it the attention that draft deserves. And so we would really appreciate the opportunity before a final version of that policy is adopted by council to have that opportunity to at least make written comments with respect to that, if not another delegation. And I don't know whether or not funeral directors within the township or within the county have been had the opportunity to look at the policy and be able to make representations. But I imagine, given the role that they are to play under the bylaw with respect to interments at St. Stephen's and elsewhere, that they would appreciate the opportunity to be consulted and have an opportunity to give their 2 cents worth and before the policy is adopted. So today we'd like to provide council with some initial information and thoughts about the gazebo use policy, specifically in relation to small pre-planned, what we're calling small and pre-planned and authorized interment gatherings that could take place within the gazebo. Our comments are based upon a review of the bylaw, the most recent version of the bylaw, and reflections on our experience to date. Now, after having quickly reviewed the bylaw provisions today, what we'd like to do is go on then to talk about what that experience was, principally what our experience was with my wife's interment at St. Stephen's. And we'd like to present a couple of options to council's consideration. We are acutely aware of the fact that this is your cemetery. And these are recommendations we're just asking you to put in the mix and to consider as you develop a final use policy with respect to what the gazebo, the appropriate use of the gazebo. So can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so the revised AH bylaw, principally section, it's Schedule A, dealing with rules and regulations, has a number of sections that were referred to during the discussions that we had at the joint committee regarding the details of the bylaw. Most of the bylaw language in our discussions focused on health and safety issues, as well as the protection of evolving ecological values within the Green Barrier area as the landscaping plan rolls out. We are very strongly in favor of both of those emphases, both on the protection of ecological values and on the health and safety of staff and anybody attending at the cemetery. Next slide, please. So I'm going to give some examples. This is by no means an exhaustive review of possible provisions of the bylaw that might be relevant to the use of gazebo, but I'd like to point to a couple of them because they're important to the options, and they set the context for the options that we would really ask council to have a look at. So, for example, section 7.22 says, quote, "All full burial interments shall be under the care and control of a licensed funeral director." Section 8.4 sub 1 goes on to give directions to the funeral directors, stipulating that, quote, "The casket or representative container specified for burial of human remains shall, quote, have a rigid bottom and sides and handles that are stable and strong enough to be transported and placed on a grave set up lowering device. Prior to closure of the grave, a rigid lid must be placed to protect human remains." So clearly, funeral directors have a very important role to play in implementing the rules that council has established. Section 8.7 has been referenced by staff in conversations with respect to requiring caskets or other burial containers to be placed, quote, "directly on the grave." That is, not to be transported to some interim location, i.e. the gazebo, but directly from the hearse to the grave. And I just want you to draw your attention to the wording of 8.7, because there was some confusion on our part, and I think that confusion, has a basis in reality. Look at the words. It says, "The interment will take place as a direct burial." Well, I just want to say to you that direct burial in green burialese, that is within the green burial movement, refers more to the idea of removing barriers between the soil and the body. It's direct burial because you remove those barriers, because it's very important in green burial circles that there be an encouragement of decomposition as quickly as possible. So you remove those barriers. You don't have any concrete vaults and so on and so forth surrounding the body. You try to use minimal amounts of material surrounding them, including and making sure that there's biodegradable caskets and so on. So that wording was not subject to the kind of discussion that was probably, retrospectively, it deserved.
Just to be
Because
clear, Terry, we're not talking today about making changes to the
I'm
bylaw.
not.
Let me
I'm-
finish.
Okay,
Only as to how it's interpreted
I-
and in relation to the use of the
I
gazebo.
got it 100% on one side with you. We're not here to suggest any bylaw revisions or changes. We're just suggesting that, that a policy take account of other interpretations of that particular provision, which council's already passed. So the third sentence of 8.7 stipulates that the cemetery manager may limit the number of witnesses in the green burial section to protect the environmental sanctity of the area and or the health and safety of staff and attendees. And the last sentence of 8.7 adds that the funeral director adds to the funeral director's responsibility set out in 7.22 by adding, quote, all attendees will be under the supervision of staff during the interment proceedings. And finally, as far as the prescribed uses of the gazebo is concerned, section 9.5E under the rules for visitors section makes it clear that picnics or parties are not allowed anywhere within the cemetery grounds. So having identified what we think are the key rules on an examination of the bylaw, we'd like to show you three images. I'd like to show you three images of the gazebo use during my wife's interment on March the 19th earlier in 2025. I should say up front that neither me or my family, nor our funeral director, knew about how the first sentence of 8.7 was being interpreted by the township when this interment happened. And so we can come back and talk about that later, but that's an important consideration from our side. So next slide, please. So you'll see that the image to the left is that it shows that this is the casket arriving from the hearse, and it's put on two stands that had been placed there by the funeral director earlier that morning. I should say parenthetically that this was not pre-planned by the family in conjunction with the funeral director. What happened is that we got to the cemetery early, and we had a conversation with the funeral director, and he suggested at that point, first thing it was earlier in the day, that this would be a way in which to make it safer for the interment to take place, knowing full well that we had a couple of members of our family who were, relatively frail. My mother is 97. And she uses a walker to get around. And in order to basically facilitate her being able to participate and say a few things about my mother and her relationship with Shirley, my mother to say a few things about her relationship with Shirley, that it would not be a good idea for her to be around the grave, and there should be a place for her to be able to say those things in relative safety. So that was decided in a conversation immediately prior to the interment. It was not something that was pre-planned. So on March 19th, Shirley's casket was taken into the gazebo from the hearse, where it was placed on two stands that had been installed in advance by the funeral director. There were 13 members of our immediate family present, including our two young grandkids, plus the funeral director and his assistant, for a total of 15 people. Everyone took a seat on the benches and took turns telling a short personal story about a memorable encounter with Cheryl. It was a wonderful opportunity for all of us to share how deeply she had affected our lives. Our little interment gathering lasted maybe a half an hour, after which the pallbearers moved the casket to the gravesite for burial. Next slide, please. With both the bylaw rules and the images of Cheryl's interment in our minds, I'd like to make a few observations and then end by presenting two options, which we hope council would consider. Section 7.22 of the bylaw stipulates that all interments must take place under, quote, the care and control of a licensed funeral director. Additionally, the last sentence of 8.7 says that all attendees will be under the supervision of cemetery staff during interment proceedings. Thirdly, and the third sentence of 8.7 stipulates that, quote, the manager may limit the number of witnesses to an interment service in the green burial section due to any reason of preserving the environmental sanctity or the health and safety of staff and those persons attending the interment. Now, I would like to present the options, a couple of options for your consideration. If you could change to the next slide, please. Okay, so given those rules and given the authority given and the responsibility delegated to both staff and to funeral directors, we'd like to present two options for council's consideration regarding interment gatherings that would be in or around the gazebo. Option one was proposing that you consider supervised, pre-planned, and approved use of the gazebo for interment gatherings with the casket present. Funeral directors could assist families with proposed plans, which would have to be put in front of the appropriate AH manager, staff person for approval in advance. Option two would allow for supervised, pre-planned, and approved use of the gazebo for interment ceremonies or gatherings with the casket placed on a lowering device, i.e. not inside the gazebo, directly from the hearse, before or after interment ceremony or gatherings within the gazebo. The Burial Society strongly prefers option one, as it would provide families with an intimate and protected space in which to pay their last respects to a loved one prior to interment. I can't tell you how meaningful that opportunity was for my family. And we would like that same opportunity to be extended to other families. We believe this option can be offered while protecting both the natural features of the Green Burial section as well as attendee and staff help at the same time. So that concludes what I have to say. I want once again, thank you for the opportunity to say a few words to you about something that's very important to us. And I would really encourage you to take some time to consult before passing a final version of a policy with respect to gazebo use. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Much appreciated. I just, without wanting to get into a debate at this point in time, because we will be having a discussion about the policy just a little bit later in the agenda. Are there any questions that council have for Terry at this point in time? Okay, thanks so much, Terry. As you know, we will be discussing the policy later on, and we'll take your comments into consideration. Could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the delegation? Councilors Richards and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Richards, seconded by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, council receives a delegation from Terry Moore regarding the use of the gazebo at St. Stephen's Cemetery for information.
All in favor? That's carried. We have no presentations today. Do any members of council have items or see items on the consent agenda that they would like to remove and discuss? Seeing none, then could I have a mover and a seconder to approve the consent agenda? Deputy Mayor Dayoud and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayoud, seconded by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine and acted in one motion. Each matter of business contained in the consent agenda is recorded separately in the minutes of the meeting, and that council approves the January 15th, 2026 consent agenda and hereby adopts the staff reports and all the recommendations contained therein and directs staff to proceed with all the necessary administrative actions.
All in favor? That's carried. Next up is building and bylaw. Good morning, Mr. Moore.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
We have your report. Are there any highlights that you'd like to
Well,
provide to us?
There's a couple. There's an omission, well, not an omission, a change. In a discussion, I indicated that we were successful in the recruitment of a sewer system program inspector administrator, and we're not. The successful candidate declined, so we are going back out for that. Other than that, it's basically, we've been busy. Obviously, we're in the midst of an office renovation right now. On the building part of things, we received 6,900 in permit fees and had a construction value of 690,000. But this being the end of the year, I did want to highlight also that's not in the report that 2025, we had a total of 27 dwellings with a construction value for all permits in around the $25 million range.
Hmm.
Whereas 2024, there was 35 dwellings and the $32 million range, so we're down about 30%. I just did a little check on the web there, and they're saying that we're still supposed to experience probably a little bit of a cooling off and building permits for this ensuing year, so.
Well, that's unfortunate, given
Yeah.
our desire to see an increase in housing development,
Yeah.
but we'll keep working on that.
That's it.
Any questions for Mr. Marr? Seeing none, could I have a mover and a seconder then to accept and approve his report? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Barry,
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, council receives building bylaw report BLDG 11 regarding December 2025 monthly activities for information.
all in favor? That's carried. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next up, Parks, Recreation, and Trails. Morning, Mr. Card.
Morning, Mayor and Council.
So any highlights you'd like to provide us on your report?
Yes, so at the start of the year, we've gone live with our reservation system for the Halliburton Highlands Water Trails for the year, so folks can go online or call one of our locations to make their campsite reservations for the year. And for docks and landings, just to highlight, for the Quagama Lake Russell Landing construction project, we were able to successfully complete the retaining wall portion of that project before winter closed in December. So the finalization of that project will happen as soon as we have favorable weather in the spring. In recreation, we've just started our non-resident surcharge for passes and memberships for the Dorset Recreation Center this year, and that's going well thus far. And so far, it's going to be good going forward to be able to look at the percentages of the uptake of which category we have. But so far, we're higher than we anticipated for non-resident usage there. Also, I want to highlight that 3 new offerings for programs in recreation, all 3 of which are were highlighted as part of the Recreation Committee survey that was done in 2023, but also partnerships with the Senior Active Living Center, where we've been graciously able to accept funding through a grant that they were able to secure. And all programs have been well received and well attended. One's the functional senior fitness at the Stanhope Community Center, and then a fitness success workshop up at the Dorset Recreation Center, which is to help people plan their usage of our weight room and understand how better to use that and be able to plan their own health related goals going forward. Third is our drop-in cornhole, which started this past week on January 9th on Friday evening. So looking forward to seeing how that plays out. Those are all the highlights.
Any questions for Chris? I maybe should know the answer to this question, but have you got the results from the survey for the Christmas tree?
We have, and we just got them in time for the holiday, and I wasn't able to get them in for this agenda, but I'd like to have the results on the next agenda. Yeah,
Okay.
I can give you a
Any
sneak preview.
sneak preview? first?
It is in favor of the proposed existing tree.
Okay, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Councillor Barry.
Just a question about the trails. I've been asked by a few people if the trails will be track set this year.
Yeah, so ski trails are track set, and we have been doing so. We right now just have a malfunction with the snowmobile, and it's in on the 19th to be repaired, and that's our track setting snowmobile. So it won't be track set today, but again, starting on Monday. Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Card? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive his report? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Short-Reed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Short-Read, be it resolved, Council receives Park Recreation Trails Report PRT 126 regarding December 2025 monthly activities for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Next up is environmental business. Good morning, Ms. Murray.
Good morning, Mayor Council.
So your first report is your general activities for December.
Thank you. Just a couple of things I'll point out. December, we were spending a bit of time getting materials and information updated with the transition of the Blue Box program to management by circular materials. So all of our educational materials now, as far as Blue Box recycling, are provided through circular materials. So we've always had our systems very well integrated with our waste and other services. So trying to separate some of those out and find the nuances to get materials together so that it meets the needs and expectations of our residents. There's some information and some clarifications still working with circular materials on. So there are the odd glitch in fluoridation here and there. So I ask for a bit of patience from everybody while we get those sorted out. Signage is one of them. We are still waiting to hear from circular materials what the plan for signage is. And just a note, we did have a closure over the winter holidays, which
I'm sorry?
we did have a site closure over the winter holidays on the 29th. Maple Lake and Dorset were closed those days due to freezing rain and the heavy snow load. Public Works was doing everything they could, but we just couldn't get those sites open and keep our roads in good shape. So our thanks to Public Works for getting everything back in gear so we could be open again on the 30th. And just to note, because we do have the year-end numbers for numbers of vehicles, so just a slight increase in traffic this year over last year. And happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Hearing none, I'm sorry, Councillor Barry?
Just to clarify, has there been a change in styrofoam in regards to where, paper's in one stream and then there's glass, metal, and styrofoam in the other? Like meat packaging specifically, has there been a change in that?
There have been some changes as far as styrofoam goes. The program has expanded to accept styrofoam packaging. Like, if you buy a ceramic something and it's packaged in styrofoam, that styrofoam now can be accepted, but that does go in our containers. The one significant change for us is what they call flexible plastics. So that's, chip bags and chocolate bar wrappers and plastic bags and, the overwrap from your toilet paper. Those now are all going into the fiber stream. So that's a little bit different. And so our fiber and container stream, containers absolutely is containers, but fiber is a little bit more mixed now than it used to be. So, and containers is now, even if it's a paper container with a plastic liner, so an ice cream container or a coffee cup. So those are paper with plastic liners. Those now go in the containers bin. So there are some changes in there, and they're not entirely straightforward. So we're certainly working
To say the
with
least.
people on getting those.
Go ahead.
Will the staff operating the landfills give a bit of a grace for some of that learning period for taxpayers?
Absolutely. And we hope that, circular materials is understanding as
Yes.
well. It was only just the very end of December where we were given the information about how materials were separated into the two streams. The materials we had been provided to that date had all been, this is the expanded program. These are all the materials, but not a lot about what goes where. So that's what we're still working on a few things with. So.
I commend you. It's an extremely convoluted process. Hard for us to keep track of. Any questions on the activity report? Or other questions, I should say? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive it? Counselor Shortreed. Seconder, Counselor Barry.
Moved by Counselor Shortreed, seconded by Counselor Barry. Be it resolved, Council receives environmental report EB 126 regarding December 2025 monthly activities for information.
All in favor? That's carried. So next is hazardous waste collection events being proposed for the year.
Always a hot topic, so it's good to get this on the agenda quickly. I have just brought forward the information from across the county for countywide events. Just to give a caution, dates for everything for 2026 are proposed. We haven't had confirmation from contractor that those dates will be available, so they may be subject to change, and can obviously subject to council's choice of moving forward with them. It was wonderful to see, if council agrees to move forward with single source procurement with GFL, that they did reduce our mobilization cost for events. So it was a pretty significant jump last year for our events. It almost doubled more than doubled from the year before. And so they have reviewed those and brought them down. Now we're sort of at a middle ground. So I think we started about $4,000 in 2024. We went to 9,000 in 2025, and now we're about 6. So hopefully leveled off at something that's a little bit easier to manage, and given the resources that we need, the number of vehicles that we have, I think are more reflective of what we're needing to operate our events. So still not inexpensive by any means, but a little easier to fit into the budget. So I have recommended or proposed to have 4 events again in 2026. Looking at 2 for Maple Lake, 1 for Oxtongue, and 1 for Dorset. And I'll open it up to questions, and we can review some of those things if council would like.
The only comment that I've got at this point in time is that I'm wondering whether we should adopt these dates before we have confirmation that they work for all parties concerned.
If I may, it's a bit of a chicken or the egg. We can, if these dates work for us, then I certainly, push harder to get those adopted. If we went to them without that, then it might be bring it to council and something might not work. So it's always a bit tricky with that. And with all dates and with all things even closer to the events, I mean, things can change, and it's always been written that dates are subject to change. So
We can amend the dates if we need to.
absolutely.
Questions on what's being proposed? Deputy Mayor Dayoud.
Not a question so much, just looking at the data supplied regarding the 2025 events. And I think it's really interesting to see the Algonquin Highlands data across the entire county. I think that's really informative, and it's so good to see how many Algonquin Highlands folk actually do go to other parts of the county. So thanks for that. And just on Algonquin High, on the Oxtongue Lake proposed date for 2026. On that one in particular, I think it might be really well timed. If I'm not mistaken, the community's AGM is earlier that morning, and we can make a really big plug for it. So that if we could keep that date, I think that'd be great.
Any other questions on that report? Hearing none, can I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the report and approve the dates being recommended? Deputy Mayor Dayoud, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayoud, second by Counselor Shortreed. Be it resolved, Council receives environmental report EB 226 regarding household hazardous waste collection events in 2026 for information, and Council concurs with the recommendation made to continue to hold hazardous waste collection events for the collection of designated and non-designated materials in 2026, and that the Township of Algonquin Highlands continue to collaborate with Dizer et al., Highlands East, and Minden Hills to provide all Haliburton County residents access to household hazardous waste events held in the county of Haliburton, and that council concurs with the recommendation to authorize a sole source procurement in accordance with section 4 of the township's purchasing policy for 2026 household hazardous waste event services to be provided by Green for Life Environmental, GFL, and that council approves the number, location, and dates of household hazardous waste collection events in 2026 pending the confirmation of dates with the service provider and budget approval.
All in favor? That's carried. Okay, finally is the Environment and Stewardship Committee update. If you'd like to go ahead with that.
Sure, we continue to have very fruitful and very engaged conversations. The big highlight, I suppose, for the most recent meeting is that we have identified leads to continue the thinking on each of our work topics. That's not to say this person has any additional power. Obviously, there is no control there. It's just the individual is now responsible for thinking through what could a timeline be, what sort of volunteer work might be required, what kind of research might be required, so that it isn't the chair alone who is thinking through these things, but the responsibility for carrying the work forward is parsed out more around the committee. So that's where we are, but very happy with how we're getting on so far.
I see that there are some, I mean, there's a lot of good work being done here. It looks great. I'm just wondering, about the financing of some of the ideas, specifically, making films, things like that. Just ensuring that are you anticipating that we would be able to do some of that work sort of without considerable cost, or do you think the committee will be asking for more funding than might normally be provided?
There's quite a bit of skill already in the committee for editing for small films and that sort of thing. But it has been discussed at this council table that if there are larger ideas, that the Green Initiatives Reserve would be a potential location to draw from, should council be in favor of those ideas. So it's been a little while since the committee has had its own, I think it used to be $2,500 or something that was allocated to the committee. It's been a while since we've done that. We've been considering the Green Initiatives Reserve as being the potential source of funding, should anything larger be required.
Okay, any questions about what's being proposed or what's on the minutes? Seeing none, can I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the update of November the 26th, 25th? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Barry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, council receives on November 25th, 2025, Environment and Stewardship Committee meeting minutes for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Public Works. Morning, Mr. Thorne.
Morning, Mayor and Council.
So the first item is the Airport Committee update, and specifically the committee's budget proposal for food service.
Yes, through Mayor, yes, the committee has investigated trying to get a food service at the airport. As council is aware, we did have one for a little while, and it's been a struggle trying to get somebody to come back. So it has had the committee looking at the big picture at the airport. So they are proposing to purchase it's essentially a sea can that's turned into a kitchen. It's actually a pretty neat little design. And that's what they're proposing to put on the property. And then next to the airport terminal building, and then remove the existing cook shack and see if we can either surplus it or reallocate it to another location for another use.
Admit, when I first heard of this proposal, I thought, what the heck? But, you know, having seen the actual proposal that they put forward, I thought, you know, this is actually not a bad idea. They're looking at some revenue coming forward from it. And the fact that they're, you know, suggesting that there be looking for submissions of interest, which would indicate what's needed in the unit and therefore establish what the cost might be, I think is a good approach to do that. And I think the earlier that we can get that out, the better. Because you know, I suspect that people offering food services across the county are, you know, already determining what they want to do. But this offers an opportunity for someone who doesn't maybe have a facility that they can use, and you know, maybe it'll spark some interest that we hadn't anticipated. So I really look forward to seeing what we get back from expressions of interest.
Yes, for sure. And I just wanted to elaborate a little bit too, that on the expression of interest, the idea is that, you know, if we do get interested parties, we can, the committee or we can speak to them about what they would like to see in the building. And I wanted to specify that if, you know, somebody came in and had a request for a completely very unique, only works for that type of food product, we would really have to take that into consideration, that we want to try and modernize the equipment that's in it so that it's a general use across the board. And then if there's something specific, it might be like a 1 or 2 type of unit that we could put inside there. You know, I'm trying to think of, you know, somebody wanted to do beaver tails and they need a certain style of equipment to run that. Maybe that's one unit that could be installed, but the entire unit wouldn't be a specific to one type of food. So it does give the option that if the first person to go in the building lands there for 2 years, it doesn't limit the next person that comes in by what they were cooking, I guess is where I was going with that. So they're pretty excited about it, and I think the EOI will certainly help dictate what that unit could look like, and you know, how much interest is in the unit to begin with. So yeah, I look forward to it.
Any questions on that? You know, of course, it's all subject to budget allocations and what we get back on the ROI. Councillor Berry.
Just out of curiosity, the request was for an upset of $75,000. Would that be totally outfitted, or would there be additional costs on top of that in regards to, you know, the infrastructure within the food truck?
Right, so they've proposed the 75,000 as an upset limit, and that would be turnkey, building dropped off and everything put together.
Go ahead.
And would it be a fixed building, or would it be able to be moved?
It would be a fixed building in the sense of once it's in place, it stays there. But if, say, planning and renovation of the terminal building or planning down the road happens, the building certainly could be picked up by a crane and moved to another location within the property. It's not mobile enough that it could be picked up and hauled up to, say, let's say the Snowball for an event. It's not that mobile, but it is mobile enough that it could be moved within the site if site plans had changed down the road. Yep.
So I was quite pleased with the committee's the amount of flexibility associated with this proposal. We'll see what we get back, you know, and hopefully it will draw more people to the airport, offer a service that we've been looking for a couple of years now, really. If there's no further questions, oh, sorry, Councillor Berry?
Asking to support this before budget, or is this gonna
No,
be?
no, we're just accepting the minutes and
Okay.
receiving the information.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I would expect that this would accept that we would go out for an ROI, but that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, that's the intent.
Mover and a seconder to receive the minutes and the report, Councillor Short-Reed and Councillor Richards.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, second by Councillor Richard. Be it resolved, council receives the December 9th, 2025 airport committee meeting minutes for information.
All in favor? That's carried. So next up is your Public Works monthly activities for November, and December.
Thank you.
We'll deal with them under separate resolutions, but you might as well cover it all
I appreciate that. Thank you. Really, the month of November was a pretty standard month for us. Starting into winter operations, closing out our fall operations, clean up at the airport with the tree clearing, things of that nature. I guess the biggest item I wanted to just bring to attention, and it was mentioned earlier, was the significant weather event. We did receive our first significant weather event on December 29th. So myself and the other municipalities in the county sat down and we had a discussion about it prior to the event to see what we were going to do. Again, it's a great collaboration between all of us. And it was a joint decision that each municipality would declare based on the weather conditions. Thankfully, for us here in Algonquin Highlands, the temperature didn't drop as quick as they were expecting and as cold as they were expecting. So that rain that we did get, the freezing rain, did build up on trees and the roads and things like that, but it broke up very quickly. Our staff were able to get out. We didn't have any delays getting out. It was a lot of work to deal with. And it was a great collaboration with our own municipality, with our CAO and our other department heads to close down some buildings and close down the landfills to allow our public works staff to stay focused on the roads. So it was a great collaboration and appreciate everyone's effort and assistance through that. So just wanted to make note of that.
Well, and as I said earlier, we're grateful for the good work that was done.
Thank you.
Any questions on, for Adam on the monthly activity reports? Councillor Short Reed.
Just one for the Dorset Rec Center and the AC. It says lobby, fitness room, library. I know the squash court has AC, but does the gym already? I can't remember.
So the main gym, like where the basketball court is, no, it does not.
It's not getting AC?
I would have to resort to Brian,
Okay.
for our
No
project
worries.
manager to see what the thought was there
Okay.
on which rooms were getting done, but and I can follow back up on that.
Okay.
Any other questions? First, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the the monthly activity report for November? Councillors Short Reed and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Short Reed, seconded by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, Council receives Public Works Report PW 3525 regarding November 2025 monthly activities for information.
All in favor? That's carried. And next, a mover and a seconder to receive the monthly activity report for December. Councillor Short Reed and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Short Reed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, Council receives Public Works Report PW 126 regarding December 2025 monthly activities for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Your final report is on wage allocation for Public Works. So if you want to address that.
Yes, thank you. So council is aware that when a couple years ago, we changed the budget in Public Works where we were trying to get rid of this up and down in our budget at the beginning of the season. So we know that budgets fluctuate and things come up and projects change and whatnot throughout the year. So staff do their best to budget as much as they can appropriately at the beginning of the season. And what we did with the equipment is that we started looking at the cost of the equipment and the life cycle, and we built a budget around every year. We put basically the same amount in, but we also include like the 3% or the cost of living or whatever the case may be. And that's been working really well. It helps level out our budget for efficiencies and for ease of looking over the budgets and things like that. And at the end of the year, we take an assessment of where we were over, where we were under, and why that took place. In further conversation with our finance department, we did this a couple of years ago in another area within Public Works where we moved over all of our bereavement, our training, our sick time, vacation, because those were all in separate cost centers. And due to staff changes, training and bereavement, things of that nature, they were really hard to budget for. So it was a educated guess, but as close as we could. We allocated that to one cost center, and over the last couple of years, that has really worked out very well for us, that it stays in one line item. So in that same thought process, myself and some of the other department heads have been talking with the finance department as well about cross-department training, or sorry, cross-department staff wage allocation. specifically PRT, and Public Works. We share the Public Works staff back and forth on multiple projects, as well as here at the office and a couple other places. And what we're finding is that we each budget for staff time. We each have to sit down and work through all of that. And the numbers are up and down on each cost item. And we're just trying to find an efficient way to make it more level at the beginning of the year for ease of viewing and ease of budgeting. So what we've come up with is a plan with our finance department to take all of the wages out of each cost center within Public Works and allocate them into one area within Public Works. And then as the year goes on, those wages would be allocated from essentially one cost item back into the other cost centers where the staff work. So at the beginning of the year, we would do our normal planning and we would still have all of our wages, but they would be calculated in a separate area. At the end of the year, you would see, let's say the DRC would have no wages at the beginning, but at the end of the year might have $10,000 in wages, and that's for the staff time that work there. So the wages aren't changing. They're just going to be allocated into a different area and then allocated back at the end of the year. It's just a really efficient way for staff to track staff time. And we're not guessing at the beginning of the year of where work is going to be done and try and allocate wages. So we feel this is be a really clean way to have a good view of what staff are doing over the year.
I found this to be an interesting proposal, and my only concern was that we would be able to, at the end of the year, determine exactly how much money in wages and benefits went into each specific project. And it sounds like we can definitely, this will allow us to more accurately do that. So, you know, it sounds like a good plan, but I look to council for questions or concerns. Deputy Mayor Dayu,
I just think it makes every ounce of sense. I really do.
Councillor Berry.
It totally makes sense. I guess my question is the way that the things have been allocated, say a backhoe is needed to come to the museum, that the hours that are spent are then allocated back to the museum and back and forth through the vehicles. Does that change, or is that sort of the same process?
Through you, Mayor, yeah, so that's a good example. So right now, what we would do is at the beginning of the season, there would be no wages allocated to the museum. Now, if it was a project, like say we were going to dig the garden up, we would still allocate the equipment time. That still has to be allocated because that's just basically paid out as we use the machine, not over the course of the year. So that would still be done. It's just the staff time would be allocated back to the museum depending on how many hours they were there.
Any other questions? Could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the reports and approve the approach? Councillor Shortreed and Councillor Berry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, seconded by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved that council receives Public Works Report PW 226 regarding Public Works wage allocation for information, and council concurs with the recommendation and direct staff to update the 2026 budget accordingly.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, sir.
If I could just add one thing, when budget comes forward and we sit down and we discuss budget, you're gonna see that each line item under Public Works and some of under Parks, Rec and Trails is going to show a reduction. So under, if it's $1 million currently in Public Works for an item, it's going to be a lot less. So when you do get your budget binders, and I'm sure our treasurer will share this with you, is just be reminded that we didn't remove the wages so that we could add more material and equipment and things like that. It's just going to be allocated in a different line. So just so you're not surprised.
Okay.
And if I could add one more item to your question, was the AC. I just see here it says basketball court. So that would be the gym that the AC will be added into. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
The next up is fire services. Oh, sorry.
Morning, Mayor and Council.
Good morning and welcome back.
Thank you. It's nice to be back.
So first up is your monthly activity report for December.
Yes, the highlight of our month of December was our awards and appreciation night we had for volunteer firefighters. Firstly, I'd like to thank Deputy Shelley and Nina for all the work they did. It was a really great presentation for everybody there for the dinner and awards. And the attendance of mayor and council was really good. Nice to see you all there. So that was the highlight of our month. For our overall year, we've been very consistent from previous years. We've only went up 14 calls and emergency responses year over year, which is nice to see. And we had a really quiet December with no major fire calls or major accidents. That's my highlight for the month, but then I'll deal with another one in the next section.
First, before I ask if there are any questions, I just would like to voice our appreciation to the deputy fire chief for the work that he did during your absence. In my estimation, he did an excellent job and needs to be commended for that.
Yes, he did.
Any questions on the monthly activity report? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive it? Councillor Berry, Councillor Short-Reed.
Moved by Councillor Berry, seconded by Councillor Short-Reed. Be it resolved, the council receives fire service report FD 126 regarding December 2025 monthly activities for information, and council hereby appoints Anthony Van Leeuwen, firefighter to Station 80.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is a verbal update on the fire protection grant.
Yes, we applied for a fire protection grant, which is for cancer prevention. And unfortunately, firefighters in Ontario are about 30% more susceptible to getting cancer than the regular person. So having this grant process allows us to put the programs in place to try and reduce the possibility. So we were we were lucky enough to receive the grant, which is for $48,000, which can continue to enhance our cancer prevention program. Cancer is prevalent within our department. We've had a couple of cases, so it's really nice to see the support of the provincial government giving us this funding. So there will be a bylaw coming forward for us receiving it.
I think the bylaw is later on the agenda.
Yes,
Any questions or comments on that? Thank you, sir.
perfect. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your days.
And you. So there's no motion right now, just later on a bylaws, okay. All right, next up is finance. Morning, Madam Treasurer.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I have a very quick report for you. It's just your standard report to present the engagement letter and the planning letters from the auditors. It's just your standard letters for proceeding with the 2025 audit. So it's for council's review and direction to sign and proceed.
And how many more years does this contract have?
I think it's 1 or 2. I'm not 100% sure right on this moment, but I know it's within the next, because I want to say it's 22 that we did this. So it's 5
Okay,
years.
maybe you could check on that
I
rather than
will.
try and guess.
Sure. Yeah, no.
Okay, any questions from council? If I could have a mover and a seconder then to receive the report and approve the recommendations. Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Berry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, council receives report TT 225 submitted by Jean Hughes dated January 15th, 2026, and council has reviewed the auditor letters and directs the treasurer and mayor to sign the letters on behalf of the Township of Algonquin Highlands to proceed with the 2025 audit process.
All in favor? That's carried. And you'll see the list of bylaws that are up for approval at the end of the agenda. Go ahead, sorry.
I looked up the contract just quickly here. It was done in 2023 for 5 years. So it'll go
Okay.
into the next term of council till 20.
Okay, right on, thanks.
Thank
Well,
you,
that'll
Angie.
make it easier for the new council.
Mhm. Thank you.
Thank you. Nothing under communications. Okay, under administration business. We have an update from the Stanhope Museum from November. Any things that members of council want to bring forward or highlight on that? Seeing none, are there any questions? Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder then to accept the minutes? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, council receives the Stanhope Museum Committee minutes dated November 17th, 2025 for information.
All in favor? It's carried. And next is the Dorset Museum. Any, damn it, oh, sorry. Any comment on the Dorset Museum? I had a couple of questions I wanted to ask, but my computer seems to have taken me away from the agenda. If there's no comments or no questions, could I have a mover and a seconder then to approve the minutes? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Richards, thank you.
By Councillor Shortreed, seconded by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, council receives the Dorset Museum Committee meeting minutes dated November 25th, 2025 for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Okay, so next is the use, I think we'll have this discussion now rather than break, and on the gazebo policy. Good morning, Ms. Hudson.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
So if you'd like to speak to
Sure.
your report and
Yes.
policy.
Thank you, Mayor Dennison. So through you, Mayor Dennison, the report is before council to present the proposed use of the proposed use of cemetery gazebo policy for the Stephen Cemetery. For council's consideration. The gazebo is intended to serve as a quiet, respectful space for reflection and contemplation for all members of the community. As a result of uses and issues which occurred that were not consistent with the intended use and the cemetery bylaw regulations, council directed staff to develop a formal policy to ensure consistent administration, compliance with the cemetery bylaw, and safe and appropriate use. The proposed policy establishes clear expectations around access, activities, and responsibilities, helping to mitigate safety liability risks while ensuring fair, equitable use of all users of St. Stephen Cemetery and within the community. I'm happy to answer any questions if we'd like to go through the policy or any other questions that council may have.
The one question that did came up during the delegation was whether we have had a meeting with the funeral directors, either individually or as a group.
I've spoken with them at the very preliminary of planning, like our first revision where I became involved in the green burial or the bylaw revision. I had spoken with them, but they have received multiple copies every time we've approved the past two revisions where we've added pre-need or at-need sales. I have spoken with both of them, and if they have any questions, I email copies to them. If they have any questions, we address them at the time, but no formal meeting going through the bylaw has been done, no.
And have they been given a copy of the draft gazebo policy?
No, they haven't. I mean, I can certainly share that with them. We haven't typically done anything like that in the past because it's it's the township's township's asset. So if we wanted to consult, we certainly can do that with the funeral directors. Just as a note, through the bylaw clauses that were cited today, the funeral directors are on site only for the purpose to witness the interment, and our cemetery staff are on site to supervise our asset and our grounds. So the funeral directors can consult on the use of gazebo nowhere in the gazebo do we really dictate their actions in the process. Those are through the bylaw. So we only ask them to be present to witness a burial, and that's not just in the green burial section. That's through all full burial processes at all of our cemeteries.
You're saying just to be present, or rather assume some responsibility specific?
They're just there to be responsible for the placement of the casket, the lowering of the casket, and that's it. We cover, we open, those are our responsibilities. So they assume no risk in the opening, the movement. Those things are all it's on our property, so we would be ultimately responsible.
I'm just wondering if there were specific, like, if the family was looking to do something specific, if there was any room for, and they were speaking to the funeral director about that, if there was any room for discussion, or, if they would access, for instance, yourself to discuss that.
Yeah, so certainly the funeral directors are like, they've reached out to me on occasion. We haven't had any requests for anything because it's pretty clear in our bylaw the expectations of the interment process, and we have never had any questions or anyone wanting to do anything different than a standard process. I was trying to think of what else I was just going to say something and it's lost my train of thought there.
You hate it when that happens. Well, okay, let's, if it comes back to you, by all means, spit it out as soon
Yes,
as
of course,
as it
yes.
comes to you. I guess I found the policy a little bit stringent, but, it's taken us a little bit of discussion with staff and, listening to thoughts from the Green Burial Society. I guess I would look to members of council to comment on what's being proposed in the policy, and what is being proposed by the Green Burial Society as far as amendments, or, having further consultations before we actually pass the policy. So comments, thoughts, questions? Start with Councillor Richards and then Deputy Mayor Dayoun.
I'm just wondering, like, from my perspective, the idea of a family gathering under the gazebo to say goodbye with the casket under there doesn't seem to me to be a big deal. So can you maybe explain why it's being advised to not do that?
Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor. So we talked about this at the bylaw approval, and we talked about it at the committee level as well. The challenge becomes, in the eyes of the BAO, when you write the bylaw, one of the best piece of advices they gave to me when we were drafting it was, the consumer needs to fully understand what they're purchasing. And so they need to understand what they can and they can't, or what may have to happen and may not have to happen. So we have to be very transparent about that. So when the weather is ideal, we may not ever have to do any form of restrictions. But when the weather is full ice, lots of snow, risks increase of slipping, of equipment malfunction, anything like that. So the wording in there is written in a way that we can create those events to be as minimal, to minimize the risk as much as possible. The challenge with movement, and it was experienced, is that in the wintertime when the frost is coming out, or even when the frost is in there, when big equipment goes in, and I'm sure Adam can probably speak to this way more technically than me, but I'll give it a go. When the tires get in there moving it around, it's thawing the top of the layer and it makes it incredibly slippery. And it was experienced. So moving the casket from the vehicle it arrives in straight to the placement of where the interment will take place is critical, because more movement, more footsteps, the more slippery the grounds become. So because we can't predict all ideal events, to make it fair and equitable, we can't actually, in fairness to the consumer, say, well, you might be able to do one of those, because we don't know. If the weather's good, we won't have to limit this, we wouldn't have to limit a graveside burial. Limiting the movement also decreases the risk of any issues that may happen within, maybe the casket might fall And then we're dealing with some other issues that might have to happen. So when we included in the bylaw direct burial, it was to mitigate all of those risks, all of those concerns. And I think initially and during all of these discussions, it was, let's start here, because that's is what we can know. And then we have to get we need to get through the process. We've heard it many times. We're the first in the county. We need to get in those first and know what we're really, really getting into before we can start. This isn't a risk anymore. Let's reevaluate that. And so this is our starting point, and I think we've done very well so far.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I can certainly understand having to go about it that way. I guess just, the bylaw is specifically forbidding it. And so I kind of
We're
like
talking
the,
about, sorry, we're talking about the policy. And
Okay.
the policy is doing the same thing.
yeah, I kind of like the perspective of perhaps, approaching staff at the time with a sort of pre-approval process then that would allow it. But allowing staff at the same time to, should conditions not be suitable for it, to say, no, you can't do it. But from time to time, rather than a full, we can't do it ever. Having staff be that backdrop to say, we could do it if it was at this time of year or under these conditions, but because it's not, we can't. So is there a way that we can do that within the?
They're
policy?
looking for a little more flexibility in the
Yeah.
policy.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If I may. So the challenge is I think only for that is for the consumer, because if somebody wishes that that's important for their process, they want to be able to do that. Their time of passing is unknown. So if they were to pass in the winter or where conditions were unfavorable, they wouldn't be able to do that. So for fair and equity, we made it across that and in fairness, the intention at the initial installation of the gazebo was only for a space of thought, contemplation, and visitors. So it was never really intended to be used as a structure to facilitate bereavement services.
Did you have a comment? Go ahead.
I'm just wondering if maybe to provide the clarity to the consumer but still trying to include what I think I'm hearing council wants to lean towards is similar to what we do in the other cemeteries, is have a time frame of burials. So this would be, you could use that for that purpose, the gazebo for that purpose between May and October. And through the winter months, it's closed.
Yeah, I personally, I mean, it was a little bit I'm taken aback at the idea of it being closed. I understand, that the risk is much greater during the winter months, and yet there are times during the winter when given climate change and things that are changing back and forth, that there are times when there's no snow. The ground might be a little bit softer and wetter, but not the same level of risk. So I was a little bit surprised at the closed for this period of time. But I understand the rationale behind it. I guess let's hear from other members of council. I know that you had some comments you'd like to make.
Thanks very much, and thank you for the extra information provided verbally. As a general principle, I would like to see this gazebo be available as often as possible for as many possible purposes, just as a general principle. And I do fully understand the question of risk. I do get that. I get winter is different. I understand the principle of equity and fairness to consumer. I do respect all of that. But the loss of a loved one is a profound moment in the life of every family. And I think we should do as much as we can to make our services amenable to engage that profound moment. And with regards to equity, the way I look at it is to flip the situation of a death to that of a marriage. There are a lot of people who want to get married outdoors. Lots and lots of people. There are people who plan for 2 years for an outdoor wedding. And there are lots of venues that offer outdoor weddings. But there is a reasonability clause. If it is a stormy, we can't give you your outdoor wedding. You're going to have to choose to come inside or do something else. But I don't know if there are venues out there who say, well, it could rain on certain days, so in order to ensure fairness, we're not going to allow anyone to get married outside. I don't know, maybe there are groups that do that, but certainly there are a lot of venues who just rely on human reasonability. There are certain times when what you want can't get done. And I think that when there is a good conversation, when there's clarity in the policy saying, you know, big reasonability clause here, folks, and then there is the potential, and I hear what you're saying about the funeral directors, but I do think there's a role there too for the funeral director to somehow support, filter the interpretation of the policy to say, you know what, folks, I hear what you're saying, you really want to be in the gazebo. Given the policy under these conditions, it's just not, it's not right. It's not safe for you. It's not safe for our, you know, for staff. It's not possible right now. And I prefer to rely on human capability for reasonability. And with that, keep our services open as much as we can, especially for those deeply profound moments in the life of a family.
I did like the idea of that Mr. Moore brought up about, you know, having some form of, like having a meeting with the funeral directors, talking to them about, you know, in each instance of a green burial, coming forward to staff and saying, look, here's what we're proposing. I mean, it may be that there's a lot of people that just want to go, you know, keep it simple, direct movement, you know, to the plot, or, you know, that they would prefer weather permitting. And I think we could probably, there is room for some flexibility in the policy that if it's looking good, here's what we'd like to do. Acknowledging that if they can't do it because of those specific, like if there's a huge rainstorm or something like that day, that it might not be able to happen and that there needs to be some flexibility in the plan. And I'm not quite sure, you know, how to direct, like if we want to add some flexibility into this policy, how to direct specifically that to happen. So, you know, we need some solid thought and some suggestions to staff to what kind of, precisely what sort of changes we're looking for in a policy. Go ahead, Sarah.
So if I can just ask a clarifying question, are we thinking for no matter the interment type? So this would also be available to cremated services as well? I'm seeing nods.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, so the gazebo would be able to be used no matter the type of interment. So it could be cremation, could be a full embalming, like anyone that can use it at St. Stephen. I want just seeking clarification on council for that.
Wow. That really opens up, you know, a huge question because I would say, I know there's been some discussion about what area is, you know, specifically attached to the Green Burial.
Yeah.
And the gazebo was donated by the Green Burial Society, and I believe that the gazebo is part of the Green Burial area. Not to say that if someone wanted to, you know, for the visitation and contemplation, there's no reason why anyone who's buried in that cemetery, entire cemetery area, couldn't come and sit in the gazebo and just think about their family member, no matter how they're, but to, you know, I'd really need to think about having services or, you know, attach the gazebo to, you know, something that was related to an embalming or not embalming, cremation, or, you know, standard burial. Like we need to think about that. I believe we need to think about whether there needs to be a differentiation or not. Madam CAO, you see your wheels turning?
They are, and I do think we need that direction, because I don't believe that was ever our understanding of the gazebo. And just in thinking that through, you know, council's wanting to provide the gazebo anytime of year. Within reason, obviously.
Yeah, whether, I do think we need to keep a weather permitting or conditions permitting or something like that to limit their.
But only restricting it to people who are doing a green burial. That,
Well, that's why when Sarah raised the, people who've been cremated or people who are being buried, I see the cemetery or the gazebo being used for remembrance, contemplation for the entire cemetery. But whether, it's actually used as part of a service for the rest of the cemetery, I have a bit of a problem with that because the gazebo was donated by the Green Burial Society, and I believe it's attached to the green burial area. But maybe I'm off the mark. I'm looking for other members of council to comment.
I can see why some people might think that way. Even I think maybe some people from Green Burial Society, I don't know, might think that way. But I don't think that it's appropriate to block the use of a gazebo for anybody within the cemetery, whether it's a part of the green burial section or not. I think it's fine. I think it's fine whether you're using the gazebo to do a green burial or you're using the gazebo to do a traditional burial. I think it's completely fine and fair.
Councillor Barry.
Just in regards to using the gazebo for a ceremony per se, seeing the presentation today and, you know, considering things like accessibility for members that are attending a service, that type of thing, I see that especially because there are seating there. I do feel that there is an opportunity. Yes, although there is risk by moving the body twice, I do think that given the sensitivity of the reason for gathering, the ceremony, that type of thing, I do think there is an opportunity possibly to accept or recognize the risk. However, I think in conjunction with the funeral director and Public Works, maybe there's a way that we can approve some use of the gazebo. I kind of feel that way.
For green burials or for everyone?
That's a tricky one. Like
Yeah.
I'm all about inclusivity, so and equitable use. I feel it's I have a hard time saying that it would only be for green burial, but I can see, given the financial and intention of the green burial, you know, working with us and getting that gazebo there for that use. But I feel like if that support is for everyone to be able to use it, it can't be one or the other. It can't be, we can come and contemplate here of our family members in the non-green burial society, but we could never gather there. I have a hard time accepting that.
It's rolling around in my head that, there's such a totally different philosophy behind green burial and cremation and regular burials, including embalming. When I think about the use of the gazebo, like if I wanted to go someplace, I don't have anybody buried in St. Stephen's. And I have not made up my mind what I might like to do personally. But I could see the gazebo being someplace where I might like to go and sit and just think about something. Just go to a quiet, peaceful place. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm mixing the use of the green burial with the rest of the cemetery. To me, that's opening up another whole discussion, and which I'm not sure can be resolved today. Deputy Mayor Dayu.
For me, it's tricky and it's not at the same time. I don't want to confuse use of a structure for a gathering with the internment of non-green remains or cremains on a permanent basis in the cemetery. That doesn't work according to the philosophy of green burial. We
Mhm.
don't want to mix that up. And most of our conversations about the use of space has been with regards to
Green burial.
with regards to the different types of permanent internment of remains. But the use of a gazebo for a gathering has no direct permanent impact on the plot of ground, which we have established as a green burial. So for me to say that with, you know, with much gratitude for the donation of part of the funds from the Green Burial Society, to therefore turn around and say, but because it's here, this section of our community who are also taxpayers and who also through us own the cemetery are not able to use a gazebo, that passes a threshold for me. I would be absolutely personally fine for anyone to be able to use the gazebo for gathering, especially Algonquin Highlands taxpayers who are contributing to this. Just like we wouldn't say ever, because you're not Christian, you can't bury your loved ones in this, in this section of ground just because we've got a chapel there that, we're not using. We wouldn't do that. We wouldn't discriminate against people to use a space, but we have designated a plot of ground for green, and that is different, and I believe should always be treated different to what happens above ground.
But having said that, do you believe that the gazebo is part of that space and philosophy?
I do. I very much do. But I don't believe that means that we should discriminate against people who don't want a green burial. I think the line is drawn with the internment, but not with the social use.
Well, I found it interesting when you mentioned earlier, like, what if you wanted to have a small wedding? And thought that that was a lovely place to have a small wedding. Are we going to say no to that? Because it's not a burial? I mean, and I'm talking specifically about the use of the gazebo. I don't know. Councillor Berry and then Councillor Richards.
Well, I just think,
Where Terry's hair is probably standing on end.
I do think that even within a small family, like a partnership could have two philosophies. Some partner wants to be married in the green burial, some partner wants to be buried in the regular
Or cremated.
tradition, cremated. So I think, again, by expanding and maybe taking a bit of the prohibited activities away actually opens up the use of the cemetery and the gazebo for all.
Councillor Richards.
Yeah, I mean, with respect of the donation, I can understand the hesitation, but the bottom line is that the donation is now a municipal asset, and our municipality should not discriminate amongst anyone.
Okay. I totally accept that. I'm kind of going back to, do you have another comment you want to make? I'm kind of going back to the two options, or do we need to have like another session to talk about this? Or can we sort of look at the two options that were presented, in the delegation today about, allowing the use of, or, under, weather permitting or conditions permitting, whatever the wording is, to allow the casket to be placed in the gazebo, to be moved twice? Or do we say, you know what, we'd prefer for the casket to go directly to the plot, and if you want to have a bit of a service or, speak to the individual, that could still take place in the gazebo. I really did, I found that I was quite moved by, the comment that Mr. Moore made about, your mother's mobility, and the funeral director saying, look, you know what, she can't, or any individual may not be able to get to the plot, but if they want to speak to, the loved one that they've just lost, that is, an opportunity for them to do that. So I think Are we ready to be able to say yes to one or the other of those suggestions? Or do we need to have a broader discussion about general use of the gazebo by one and all? Madam Deputy Mayor.
I do think of other cemeteries around Ontario where there is a little chapel which is used exclusively for funerals. Well, I guess if you wanted to get married in there, maybe they would allow you. I don't know. I don't honestly know who would choose that, but I might be wrong. But you know, in Peterborough, there's a lovely little chapel. The casket is moved from the hearse to the chapel. There's a service from the chapel to the plot. And in Peterborough, as in Aurora, which I'm also very familiar with, and Kingston, which is I'm very familiar with, these are where my people are. There are hills. There are real difficult conditions for winter burials, and it is figured out. And I look at the green burial plot. It is flat to flat. Spaces are very close together. I would like to try. I would like to, to be able to offer the same sorts of offerings that others offer, knowing that our conditions are, if anything, easier than in some of those other cemeteries, where indeed, the casket is moved a couple of times, and and has been moved a couple of times since 1856 when the cemetery was opened, and I'd like to offer as much as we can to the bereaved families.
Is 1856 a number that's coming just out of the sky, or is it an actual number?
No, it's coming out of the sky, but I do
Okay, it just was curious.
but I do know that in my family cemeteries, indeed burials go back well over 150 years.
Yeah. Councillor Barry.
One of my thoughts too in this discussion is because the plots are so close together in the green burial, the gathering on the plot sometimes, depending on how many people are there,
You're standing on someone else.
You're in pretty close proximity to other remains. So just a thought, if there's a way that we can have weather, like, we're not going to open up the gazebo in the middle of February when there's 3 feet of snow. But if there's a way, if the weather permits, that it could be used, that would be my preference.
Rather than specifically saying closed between. Councillor Short-Reed.
Yeah, the gazebo in the winter isn't going to be, I don't think staff are going to be there shoveling it every time it snows. It just doesn't make sense. But the gazebo is in the green section, and you can't put a sign up saying no trespassing, only for green burial. So, I mean, it's the whole cemetery. So the whole cemetery should be able to use it for contemplation, reflection, whatever, but having it for the green burial to do that so that they aren't, like Councillor Barry said, when we does get crowded in our green burial section, they do have an option.
Councillor Richards.
Yeah, it is a very small space, so I can understand, certainly we need to have some discretion on amount of people, et cetera, because that place could be quickly overwhelmed. So that is important to the safety of everyone. I would say that I have no problem to defer this to see the wording come back to us again, or if staff feel they have enough direction at this point.
Well, and I would also like to, this issue of having a discussion with the funeral directors who might have some thoughts about this particular policy and how they might fit into it. I'd be interested in hearing, thoughts that they've got, and acknowledging that, bottom line, it's our decision to make. We want to make sure that everybody's safe and limit the liability. But at the same time, I'm seeing some need for some a little bit more flexibility in the policy. Go ahead.
Just in regards to the space, and if there was a large gathering, there's actually more space, I feel, up at the gazebo area than on the actual area where the remains will go. Yes, maybe the people, you might have to gather around, and the people with accessibility issues would have access to the benching, but then maybe there could be a second row of people behind it. I just think it's more conducive than to have that many people on the remaining.
In the area where the plots are. Well, and that raised a question because, you know, when we're talking about the possibility of limiting the number of people, where's the line there? I mean, and I'm suspecting that part of that is conditions permitting. But where is the line? At what point? Like, are we going to allow 15 people, 25 people? And who makes that decision?
Through you,
ahead.
Mayor. So the delegation of that decision is in the bylaw, and it's to the public works manager, and that's to the grounds. The restricting of guest number would only come to a winter burial essentially, because operationally, the driveway will be plowed partly right now because we're working at the front. But when we start working towards the back, the driveway will be plowed in, and the ground won't always be uncovered. The row will be uncovered. So the restriction will come on the weather conditions inside and how much we can safely do there. But I guess I just wanted to ask, attached to that question is, as we progress through the cemetery, we're starting at the front where it's very easy to utilize the gazebo right now, as you noted, Councillor Berry, it's right there. But as we start to work towards the back, that won't always be the option. And so I guess my question is it of council's interest to attempt to clear in the winter, clear the snow by the gazebo if we're working towards the back? Or is it council's interest that maybe it's just for the winter and spring where it's kind of mucky, that we just don't use the gazebo until we can access it as we progress to the back? So the restriction, to answer your question, restriction will only really happen in the winter, and that's only for the safety of the grounds. Otherwise, we don't restrict guests in the summertime. Like, we have many. And the nice thing about the green burial, like the natural burial section, is that because we're working at the front, working to the back, guests, when the weather's good, can stay on this side, right? As we progress this way, this side will get naturalized, but the guests can stand back here. There's nobody in this side. So it would be just green grass until it's utilized. So there's lots of space. It is really just in the winter time that the space becomes a challenge.
Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Just flipping back for a moment to your question about would we permit weddings there, for example. Having reflected on it for a moment, I would say no, for a couple of reasons. One, we've already established this is not a party site.
True.
And a wedding is a party. And number two, we do not want to pre-book a place for a wedding, which, you know, could happen 6-10 months in advance.
And then need
on
it
a
for,
day when there could be someone needing to be interred. It's just not, it's not a mixed use space, in my opinion.
you know, the only reason I brought that up was because you mentioned weddings and I thought, but I mean, that's never really been contemplated. And you're right, we probably should not and could not.
Yeah, and just to clarify, it wasn't I didn't bring up weddings with that intent in mind. The idea is the outdoor wedding still goes ahead, or it does not, based on weather, and people understand the reasonability of it. And I think we could do the same for our guests at the cemetery.
Councillor Berry.
So is it possible for this to come back to us?
Well, I would think that it definitely is going to have to come back to us, but my question was going to be, have we given enough clarity for what we're looking for, you know, for it to come back to staff or go back to staff for some amendments?
I think the last thing for me, and maybe Sarah could jump in, she'll be the one, her and Don will be working on it. But for me, I'm thinking, I know there was a request by Mr. Moore to have pre-approved planned use of the gazebo, which suggests booking. And that's a whole other realm for us.
Yeah, no, I don't think we were going into the booking, you know, I was sort of thinking, okay, someone passes away. it's acknowledged that they know that they want to be buried in the Green Burial Society. So, you know, in the period of time within the, you know, the few days between the passing away and the burial taking place, the funeral director could come in and just talk with, after having talked to the family, come in and talk to Sarah or whoever and say, here's what we're planning to do. Is this okay? And based on where we land with the policy, you know, it would be relatively easy to say, yeah, right now, yeah, we can probably do that. Now, we may, you know, things can change so quickly when it comes to weather that, you know, I think you still would have to say weather permitting, or, you know, unless there's no change, we can do this. But it was like not getting into booking. But just a discussion to make sure that, you know, when the family says, here's what we'd like to do, and the funeral director knows what we've got in our bylaw and what, you know, sort of what the rules are, that they could come and say to someone here, here's what we're planning. Can you give us the okay for this? Does this sound all right?
And for me, just one last one, I guess it's just a inclusion of wording that says if available. Because in my mind, I'm thinking that because it is a space that, as you mentioned, Mayor, anyone could go and do contemplation. And should someone or a family be there during that a burial, it may not be available for the burial to use. So that's a very real reality. It's not likely, but it could happen. So I think it's important to say if available.
Yeah, or conditions permitting, or like, you know, what, some wording
Yeah,
like that.
exactly.
Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Question for clarification though. So you're saying that if there was a burial that had been arranged through the township, it will be at this time. If the family arrives and there are people sitting in the gazebo, that the family bereaved would not be able to use the gazebo? Is that the?
Through you, Mary. Yes, potentially, because there's no booking of the gazebo. And so we wouldn't know that someone or another family is planned that same day to go and have their contemplation. So if the people for the burial arrive and there's already someone in the gazebo doing their contemplation, like it wouldn't be up to the township to say, you have to leave.
No, and I don't think we'd want to say, I would think it would be the choice of the people that are there. Oh, there's, you know, there's going to be a you know, a ceremony. I'm not sure that, or there, you know, there's going to be a ceremony, I guess. And somehow that word doesn't seem to fit right for me, but they have the choice of either remaining or leaving. I mean, it's their choice. It's not up to us to say, you've got to go. Go ahead.
But again, back to the reasonability of humans, I do think that in the policy, if we say priority will be granted to a bereaved family undertaking an internment, then given that there are public works staff and there are funeral directors present, that policy could be referred to and said, you know, it's as you see, the ground has been opened, we will be receiving someone at 2 o'clock. I hope it's, you know, and they would find the words. I hope it's, you understand that we would, this, you know, this space is going to be used for the internment at that time. I do think that's reasonable.
Oh, yeah.
And with just a couple of words in the policy, it could be relayed and, you know, hopefully there wouldn't be any conflict over that. But I'd like to think that there would be a lot understanding that the family interring their loved one would have first dibs on the gazebo.
But, you know, on the same hand, I don't want us to get into a situation where we're booking it, that there's a, you know, that, you know, it's just, it flows naturally. And I honestly, I can't see that would happen very often. And the people who may be there, you know, just visiting their loved ones would understand, and either they could remain there. There's no reason why they couldn't remain there or leave. But, you know, the funeral is going to take place. Madam Clerk.
If I may, just to add to that, it may not just be a contemplation, it may not just be a few people sitting there. If someone arrives for a cremation interment or another interment, they may be under there using it. So as long as people understand that the as available could apply to when you show up, if it's available, you're more than welcome to use it because it could be another ceremony or taking place.
And that, go ahead.
Question for clarification, if, when using a columbarium, do you have to advise the township presumably when you intend to insure the remains in the columbarium?
Sorry, maybe for clarity, there's no columbarium there, but it could be
There can
somebody
be or
incurring
maybe.
cremated remains in the regular side, or another funeral taking place under the gazebo. We would know that there's multiple burials taking place, but at different times, perhaps.
Yeah.
Counselor Barry.
Clarification on that, just in our existing cemeteries right now, how, I would think that when there's funerals that are happening on the same day or time, I would think they would be spaced apart, would they not?
Likely they would be, yeah. Spatially, not time-wise. Oh,
Be like, okay, this is gonna happen here and this is gonna happen here at 2 o'clock.
go ahead, Angie.
Through you, Mayor, yes, they are generally spaced out, but that doesn't, that only, it speaks to when the funeral director is doing their part of it. It doesn't restrict how long the families remain.
I get that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they could overlap, is what I'm saying.
Okay, so you've heard a lot of comments here, and obviously we need to defer approval of the policy for now. I can see there may be a need for some more conversation. I would like to see some discussion, between yourself and the funeral directors to see if they've got any thoughts. Because I've during the course of these discussions over green burial and how things would happen, I've heard a lot of different ideas and thoughts and how things are done in different places. I expect that this is going to be a learning experience for us all, that, over time, we're going to discover this isn't a problem at all, that, we thought it might be a problem, but it isn't a problem. Or, hey, we didn't contemplate this happening at all. And we're going to meet, I can see that this document may have to be, as many of our documents are living documents and need to be amended from time to time. Do you think you have enough to take this back and sort of work it a little bit based on what you've heard? If I'm not mistaken, I think you've heard council suggesting that they support the casket being moved twice.
Yeah.
Weather or conditions permitting.
Mhm.
Am I correct in that? Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads. Can we leave it with you?
Yes, through you, Mayor. Yeah, I think I have everything that I require to review, and we'll meet internally. I will like to look at the bylaw because our bylaw section does say direct burial. So we may want to, if we meet internally and decide, we might want to, we might have to change the language on that because our bylaw says you need to put it to a direct burial, as in, and I know Mr. Moore had commented on his delegation, the intent of that clause was to minimize moving. So if we want to change that, then we may have to consider that. But let's meet internally, and I think I have enough.
Well, and there seems to be some different interpretations to what that means, what the direct burial, means. And, I can see you maybe needing to have further conversation with the BAO as well,
Mhm.
as a funeral director. So I think we can safely say that we're going to defer.
Mhm.
So I don't know what we need to do with respect to that we've received the report and the draft policy and defer it until amendments have been made. And see how the next discussion goes. Can I have a mover and a seconder to that effect? Deputy Mayor Dayu and Councillor Short-Reed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Short-Reed. Be it resolved, council receives Deputy Clerk Report DC 3325 regarding a policy to regulate the use of the gazebo at St. Stephen's Cemetery, and the council directs staff to bring back a revised policy for further discussion.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. I think we'll take a 15-minute break. Welcome back. Call the meeting to order again. And the next item on the agenda is correspondence from the Friends of St. Stephen's. I guess we just received this as information, unless there's any questions that members of council have. Yeah. Correspondence from the Friends of St. Stephen's. So we need to start all over again? Okay. I would like to say that I truly appreciate the work that the Friends of St. Stephen's have done with the township in the transfer of the St. Stephen's Church to the township, and with respect to the donations that they have made are very, very much appreciated. I think they're most appropriate and definitely most appreciated. So could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive that correspondence? Can sorry, just about gave you a promotion. Councillor Barry and Councillor Shortreed. I have a question before the resolution. Okay, go ahead.
I do appreciate the request of a plaque. Is there a way that that could live somewhere?
Did it not be forgotten, you mean?
Yeah,
Can you put that in your columbarium file?
Absolutely.
That would be much appreciated. So you have a mover and a seconder? Okay.
Moved by Counselor Barry, second by Counselor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council receives correspondence from Wanda Mole regarding St. Stephen's Church, and that council expresses its sincere appreciation to the Friends of St. Stephen Church for the donation of $1,929.65 towards the installation of a columbarium at St. Stephen's Cemetery, and the donation of $403.30 to the Stanhope Heritage Museum to be used for continued preservation of local heritage initiatives. And further, the council directs a general cemetery reserve be created to include the $1,929.65 donation to be used for the future installation of a columbarium at St. Stephen's Cemetery.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next is the monthly activity report from our digital transformation staff member extraordinaire.
Why, thank you. And thank you, Madam Mayor. The report that is in front of you summarizes the monthly activities from November. There is much that has happened since then, and I do look forward to updating council on that at the next opportunity. With respect to this report, I don't have anything specific to highlight, but happy to take any questions that you may have.
Questions? Councillor Barry.
just in regards to, you said here in your meetings that you met with the director of IT to provide input and an approach to developing guidelines and training for AI.
Yes.
Is there a policy that you foresee coming forward in regards to that?
Yes, we do. In fact, the director of IT at the county is working as part of a collaborative group with some other municipalities and with a digital consultant to put a draft policy together that he will bring back and share with our respective municipalities. So that is in the works. In the meantime, we are working with the county, and the digital transformation working group is working together to identify some guidance that could be provided to staff in the meantime as we wait for that policy. Because we know a lot of staff are currently using things like Copilot or using ChatGPT. So some guidelines around appropriate use is what we're looking at now as we await a policy that will come forward for review.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
And do you think that there will be considerable new security issues that arise because of this? With the continued or continuing increase of use of AI?
Yeah, I think that cybersecurity, from what I understand through the director of the IT at the county, cybersecurity continues to be a large concern for all organizations and municipalities and is on the forefront. I believe that the county is now investing in an additional resource to support some of those cybersecurity activities. But yes, I think it will continue to be top of mind and something that we will need to provide some training and education and guidance on.
Any other questions on this report? A mover and a seconder to receive it. Councillor Barry, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Counselor Berry, seconded by Counselor Short Reed. Be it resolved that council receives Digital Transformation Coordinator Report DT 225 regarding November 2025 monthly activities for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. The next is a piece of correspondence from the Kawartha Conservation Protection Authority. I think looking for support for a specific member that they want to appoint to the committee on our behalf. Any concerns or questions about that? I mean, really, the work that the Conservation Authority does there has very little impact on what we do here, so I don't see any issues. So could I have a mover and a seconder then to approve the recommendation? Councillors Berry and Shortreed.
Moved by Counselor Berry, second by Counselor Short Reed. Be it resolved that the Township of Algonquin Highlands endorse City of Kawartha Lakes Planning Officer Environmental Policy Jenna Stevens as a Kawartha Halliburton Municipal Representative on the Trent Conservation Coalition's Source Protection Committee.
All in favor? That's carried. Next up is planning. Hello again.
Hello again, Mayor and Council.
So the first item is a proposed shoreward allowance closing on Kushag Lake.
Thank you. Yes, this application, this is the bylaw to close the shore road allowance in front of this property. The reason this is not on the consent agenda is because there is a requirement for a deeming bylaw also be passed. And that's really just a formality so that the shore road allowance will merge with the applicant's property. So there'll be two bylaws before council, the deeming bylaw and the bylaw to close the shore road allowance.
Okay, any questions on that? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to approve the receipt and report? Deputy Mayor Dayu. Councillor Berry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Counselor Berry. Be resolved, council receives funding report PL 226 regarding proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of Lot 4, Concession 2, Geographic Township of Stanhope, Kushag Lake, and that council directs a deeming bylaw to deem Lot 9 of Plan 334 not to be a lot on a registered plan be tabled for further consideration, and that council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and concurs with the recommendation made in the said report and directs a bylaw to stop up, close, and pay this said shore road allowance be tabled for further consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Just know I can deal without it. It's just, it just automatically, without any action whatsoever, said that we can't connect and we need to sign in again. Sorry. Next item is the proposed license of occupation on Maple Lake.
Take it.
Might want to send this with it.
Thank you. Yes, this is a proposed license of occupation for this property on Maple Lake. It's a bit of a unique one where it's not a municipally maintained road that separates the property from the water, but it's a private road that runs along the shore road allowance. So in this case, it would not be appropriate to sell the land as it is a well-used access point to the neighboring cottage, or it's the only access to the neighboring cottage. However, the license will still allow the applicant to use the property while maintaining access to the neighboring property. So staff's recommendation would be that it be approved in principle.
Any questions or concerns with this? Seeing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to approve the recommendation? Councillor Richards, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Counselor Richards, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, council receives planning report PL 826 regarding proposed license of occupation, part of Lot 27, Concession 6, Geographic Township of Stanhope, Maple Lake, and that council approves in principle application AH LOC 125 made to enter into a proposed license of occupation for the said property, and that the applicants are requested to proceed in accordance with the license of occupation policy.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Okay, under external board meetings. First up, a Dorset Partnership and or Community Health Up.
Nothing for either right now. Our nurse practitioners should be back to work in March. Should that bring our hub meetings back to date and also the partnership meetings?
And the partnership have not had any meetings at all? Unusual. Okay, Councillor Richards, anything under Upper Trent Water Management? Or Muskoka Watershed?
No, nothing on either of those. There haven't been any meetings since our last update on them. And then the FOCA, they have had a meeting, but there's not really anything to update. They're continuing to work on their plan.
Well, that takes care of 3 items. The OPP Detachment Board hasn't met since we last met. Their meeting is scheduled for the 21st. So hopefully I'll have some information to impart then. I think there's still a concern about communications between the detachment board and local officials. So hopefully we can bring that up and see some action in that regard. Next is the library board.
Thank you. The Dorset hours have now been increased and include Thursday evenings, which is great. And that comes from direct request through surveys of the community. So it's nice to see the flow through from survey to community request for certain change to that being implemented. So that's wonderful. And we also have now a new public member to our board. And the chair position will be elected at our next meeting in February.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear you make that, clear that the request had come from the, users of the library. I know that at one point in time, a report that came from the library CEO sort of suggested that the increase in the budget was due to increased hours at our library, and suggesting that it had been a request that came from us. And, that it's not a request that we made, but if they can be built into the program and their budget, that's wonderful that they're able to respond.
And if I might take a moment just to clarify, yes, indeed, there was an increase to the budget. It was about $4,000 over the course of the year in order to increase hours at Dorset. There was a sadly misinterpreted item in the newspaper, in one of our local newspapers a few weeks ago, saying that the majority of the budget increase had to do with the Dorset hours, and indeed that's not true. It had to do with step increases and other very normal increases, insurance, etc. Only $4,000 increase is going to hours at Dorset.
Thank you for that. Anything on community safety and well-being?
Nothing to speak of, no.
I see there's been some excellent work done by the coordinator, the Community Safety and Wellbeing Coordinator, and just an amazing list of services and events and happenings, and putting out a calendar for everybody to know what they may or may not want to be involved in. A lot of good work happening there.
Yeah.
Anything under Muskoka River Watershed Communication?
Every once in a while, we receive a little email reminding us that there's nothing much to say until the freshet begins. So I anticipate from late February and March, that's when they're going to start giving us some valuable information.
With respect to County Council, of course, I'm sure everybody's aware that County Council have now passed their budget. Which, I think was well done. There was lots of input into that, and a reasonable increase. Of course, a lot of the increase was due to uncontrollable outside sources like City of Kawartha Lakes and the services that they provide, housing, and what comes out of the City of Kawartha Lakes housing. And I'm not sure that there's really anything else, or I know that there seems to be a bit of a push for council to, and members of the public to know what's happening with service delivery, but I think that there's working groups are still, in working on that process, and that we'll hear more, hopefully, not too long from now on that. Any comment about working groups or how that's going?
I know in speaking to our staff that sit on those, they're going well. There's some great collaboration happening. We had a group meeting with all of the groups planned for yesterday afternoon, but unfortunately that got canceled. So we'll be rescheduling that. But I know that they're moving forward very well.
Oh, that's good. I look
Mhm.
forward to hearing the results of the group
Mhm.
meeting. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
One other point to note on, from County Council, just yesterday, we had a really interesting presentation from ULinks, who have for the last number of years been doing water testing, physical and chemical water testing across the lakes of Halliburton, including obviously Algonquin Highlands. Every year they bring more lakes on board. They would love to get all of the, especially developed lakes on board. They're going from strength to strength. And I do think if there is an opportunity for us in our work and collaboration with lake associations to encourage that to continue in their lakes and those lakes that aren't on board yet, that would be really great. It's a really important initiative. It's very cost effective, and it impacts all of us.
Thank you. Which reminds me, and something that is relative to this council, is that the issue of communications and advising, residents on certain lakes when there's a blue-green algae outbreak. We've run into this problem ourselves where we suggest that the health unit is responsible. They are responsible for advising residents, cautionary notes about blue-green algae blooms, and them sort of saying like, we're not doing that. If you want that done, you can do it yourself, and that's not right. Particularly when you see other health units, and I would use Muskoka as an example, where they have a completely different approach, and they do the communication, and put out notices of concern to residents. And so there has been some commitment by a council to communicate concerns about that and see if we can't make any progress with respect to that. And I think that the ULinks group will assist in that regard. Nothing under general business. Is there any notices? Are there any notices of motion? Hearing none, going on to correspondence. Were there any other requests other than my own?
No.
Okay, so I had asked that the correspondence from Minden Hills, which seems to have traveled by a very slow snail, given that this resolution was passed in May and somehow isn't reaching us until now, that we support their letter or request to write to the Ministry of voicing our concerns about the strong mayor's powers. And I just feel, even though we have written correspondence to that effect in the past, that this is very specific to one of the municipalities in our council, in our county, and I'd like us to consider supporting their request for support. Any comments or questions about that? If you see that they had a 6-1 vote, the 6 councillors against the mayor. So could I have a seconder to support there? Thank you, Councillor Barry. Go ahead.
Moved by Mayor Dennison, second by, excuse me, Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, Council of the Corporation of the Township of Algonquin Highlands supports the Township of Minden Hills resolution opposing the expansion of strong mayor powers and requesting that the Premier of Ontario and the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing remove the Township of Minden Hills from the list of municipalities that was granted strong mayor powers, and further a copy of this resolution be sent to the Premier of Ontario, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario.
And could we add copy to the Township of Minden Hills? Okay. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So I guess we would now adjourn to closed session. So could I have a mover and a seconder to move into closed? Councillor Short-Reed and Barry. And apologies to you. Well, because, you know, maybe we didn't need to order lunch. Sorry.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved that open session adjourn at 11:31 a.m. in order to proceed into closed session for the purpose of discussing labor relations or employee negotiations in accordance with Section 232D of the Municipal Act 2001 SO as amended regarding proposed changes to rules of specific employees.
All in favor? That's carried. RCA remain in place and act as the clerk for this portion of the discussion. And next on the agenda are the bylaws. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the bylaws? Councillor Short-Reed and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved the following bylaws be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with a corporate seal affixed. 2026-01 to authorize the borrowing of money to meet current expenditures of the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Algonquin Highlands. 2026-02 to provide an interim tax levy and to provide for interest and penalty to be applied on taxes. 2026-03 to appoint an auditor for the Corporation of the Township of Algonquin Highlands. 2026-04 to provide for the setting of salary and wages for the year 2026. 2026-05 to establish the rates of remuneration for members of council for the year 2026. 2026-06 to amend bylaw 2022-49 as amended, being a comprehensive zoning bylaw of the Township of Algonquin Highlands, application AHZBA 725. 2026-07 to stop and close and convey the abutting property owner part of the original Shore Road allowance. 2026-08 to stop up, close and convey to the abutting property owner part of the original Shore Road allowance. 2026-09 to deem Lot 9 on Registered Plan 334 Geographic Township of Stanhope not to be a lot on a plan of subdivision. 2026-10 to stop up, close and convey to the abutting property owners part of the original Shore Road allowance. And 2026-12 to authorize the execution of a fire protection grant transfer payment agreement.
All in favor? That's carried. Next, could I have a mover and a seconder for the confirmatory bylaw? Councillor Richards and Councillor Barry.
Moved by Counselor Richards, seconded by Counselor Barry. Be it resolved that bylaw 2026-13 to confirm the proceedings of council held during its January 15th, 2026 regular meeting be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All in favor? And finally, it's a motion to adjourn. Deputy Mayor Dayu? Counselor Short Reed?
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Counselor Short. Be it resolved that the meeting is hereby adjourned at 12:28 PM.
All in favor? That's carried.